Now, as South Africans marked Human Rights Day yesterday, the role of the Constitution as a custodian for human rights is coming to sharp focus. Parliament says a lot still needs to be done to bridge the widening gap of inequality as it continues to undermine the rights of South Africans. Let's talk to John Jeffrey now, who is Deputy Minister of Justice and Correctional Services, as we reflect on the Constitution's role and how far it has helped us come. John, good morning. Thanks very much for your time this morning on the AM report. I mean, it's wonderful to have this living document that is the Constitution, but if we look at the conditions of people, the majority of South Africans on the ground, it's a far way away from what the Constitution says are the basic human rights of South Africans.
Yes, it unfortunately is, and that's the challenge to basically overcome this, or to equalize South Africa more, to ensure particularly the socio-economic rights that people have are more able to realize them. But let me just say that, I mean, the Constitution in a sense is the standard that is set in terms of the Bill of Rights, and that then can be enforced or is enforced by the courts, ultimately the Constitutional Court, which will rule that particular actions by government or by another party violate the rights and therefore need to be corrected.
So on this Human Rights Day, you know, today the public holiday carrying over from yesterday, you know, as usual, political parties, the president himself, we say all of these wonderful things about what human rights means to us. But how do we, for example, navigate what the president had to say yesterday in that virtual address, where he talks about, you know, building a better South Africa free from inequality post-COVID-19. There's a big gap between what the president says, John, and how we are actually going to do that.
Yes, there is. A lot of what needs to be done by government, but I would say it's also something that all the people of South Africa need to contribute towards. For example, you know, with the inequality, the salary scales in the upper echelons of the private sector are, I think, excessive. You know, the gap between the highest paid and the lowest paid is much, much greater than a capitalist country like Japan. So what are we doing to restructure that? What are we doing are people willing to say, look, this is too much money, I'm willing to take less, or it's always an issue of a person wanting more and more. So what I'm saying is, I think it's something that I think the importance of something like Human Rights Day is to reflect on what it should be, so that we can see better how we can get there.
Yeah. I mean, when we talk about what Human Rights Day means to us, of course, we reflect on the Sharpeville massacre. But, you know, in 2021, we also reflect on the situation that so many South Africans face. And we reflect on things like the Marikana massacre. We reflect on fees must fall protests. We reflect on pit toilets still in schools, and you've mentioned it as well, the levels of gender-based violence in our country. So it can't be a ribbon-cutting ceremony, can it, John, given the kinds of challenges?
Definitely not. It's not about patting ourselves on the back.
Yeah.
It's on looking at the Constitution, reflecting on where we are now, and seeing where we need to change. And this is, look, we're human beings. Human beings are imperfect. We make mistakes. So this is going to be an ongoing process, but there's a lot more that can be done at the moment. Obviously, with the anniversary of the Sharpeville massacre, that focused more on political rights. But our Constitution, as you've said, is more than just political rights. It's also socio-economic rights.
Yeah.
And it's particularly there that things are falling down.
And, you know, it's different this year in 2021 because we've been through an unprecedented year here in South Africa and around the world, with COVID-19 almost adding fuel to the kinds of fires we're seeing work against Human Rights Day.
Sure. Look, I think, ironically, there was meant to be a public Human Rights Day event this time last year, which was, I think, one of the first government events that was cancelled because of COVID. It was just before the lockdown. But the lockdown really has had serious ramifications for the country as a whole and for the people living in it in terms of, reduction in economic activity, limiting people to their places of residence, which may be overcrowded. So it has made things a lot more difficult. Also from our side in justice, the issue of ensuring access to the courts during the lockdown, particularly for things like gender-based violence orders.
So, John, for you in the Department of Justice on this Human Rights Day, as we continue to reflect today, post the 21st of March just yesterday, as the Department of Justice, how are things going to change, living in a post-COVID-19 society? How is your department perhaps finding new ways of doing things?
Well, unfortunately, I think we're not in a post-COVID society, we're still in a COVID society. Look, one of the positive spin-offs of the lockdown has been a stronger move towards digitalization. So is it necessary to come to court to give evidence? Why can't you give evidence virtually? That has been allowed in our law in criminal cases, but it wasn't used much. It's being used much more effectively now in terms of there's a case requiring medical evidence from a doctor. The doctor is in another part of the country. They've been able to give evidence virtually. So I think that is the main drive. But we've got a lot more that we need to do to ensure that this works more effectively, that people can apply for protection orders, for example, online, that a lot of the things can be done online, that people don't need to keep queuing up physically to get into the courts.
John Jeffrey, thank you very much for your time this morning on the AM Report. He is the Deputy Justice Minister as we continue to reflect on various issues around Human Rights Day.